Well, good morning. Let's shift gears to talk about a very summer-like forecast. The bottom line here is that we're likely looking at another warmer, a warmer than normal week and possibly longer than that. I want to start off though thinking about the last week and actually famous comments made here about the smoke. Well, we have smoke, but it probably won't be very long-lived. Well, those are famous last words. Here we had it turned out we had smog and smoke over the state for almost a whole week. And I just wanted to make a couple comments about that are relevant. The reason for the extra smoke was basically the lack of airflow above the surface. And on the right-hand side here, these are upper air conditions here earlier this week with the wind barbs in there indicating where the wind is from and how strong. But what we had last week that was not anticipated, certainly not by me, not by many meteorologists, but was the fact that the winds were very weak above the surface. And so an area of smoke that had migrated out of central Canada here 2 weeks ago basically sat over the area. We even had one day, and this is one of them, the Monday and Tuesday, where some smoke that had actually been over the state and then moved to the east and out, it moved back into Michigan. That's something that doesn't happen very often. Now, on the left-hand side here, these are concentrations here this morning. And I think there's another issue here, another lesson here. But the area that has been with us for seemingly forever, for at least a week, now the core of that has moved and shifted off to the east over to New York and southern Ontario, southern Quebec. That's what was here for so long, a resident for so long. And the source of that, of course, were wildfires, forest fires up in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. And again, northwesterly winds that brought that smoke into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. And again, it sat here for longer than anticipated. But the other point I want to make was if you look at the map, you'll say, well, what's going on out to our west? There's a lot of smoke out there too. The yellows, oranges, reds here are all high concentrations of smoke. And the answer is, well, those are relatively new fires, but they're in the U.S. And so we have another source of smoke. There are fires currently in Colorado, Utah, New Mexico that are problems, and they're now leading to a secondary source, or we could call it a primary. So I think the bottom line is here, as we look at our growing season, we've had quite a few visits from smoke this year. There will be more to come. And one of the reasons is because there's another source in the western U.S. In addition, of course, we don't have to have northwesterly winds to get the smoke from the western U.S. It's going to be more westerly, and that's typically what we see at this time of the year. So, and to follow up on that, we've had quite a few questions here at the Climate Office about what are the physical impacts of the smoke? And of course, we see the red sunsets and really, really pretty skies at night, and of course, the hazy conditions during the day. What does all that really mean? Well, one that is relevant for all of us here in plant-based agriculture. How much solar radiation makes it to the surface. And to do that, I took some data here from our EnviroWeather site at East Lansing, and we're looking at solar radiation, which makes it down to the surface. And of course, solar drives all life, literally on the planet, and water use. It's an absolutely critical factor. And if we change the amount of that, of course, it can change the physics of how plants make dry matter and so forth. But the question here is how much did that smoke matter? And I'm throwing an example out here. We're looking at 2 weeks. So there's 7-day periods. These are hourly values of solar radiation at East Lansing, and you'll see the daily cycles here. And I chose these two. The top 7 days here are a week back and earlier in July, the 9th through the 15th. It was a relatively cloudless, sunny week. There's one exception you can see on the 11th where we did have clouds, but without the smoke, that's the typical type of solar flux that we get. You can see it's somewhere between 850 and 900 watts per meter squared at this time of the year. Now, on the bottom here, we have the last week, or much of the last week, the 29th through the 4th of August. Also, a period with relatively low clouds, but the addition of all the smoke. And you can see the mean value here for our peak daily values. And it goes down from what it's 869 for that earlier week in July. It's down to 755 here for the most recent week when we had the smoke. And of course, it varied a little bit by day. But in general, what this means or suggests is that for the at least the top end solar radiation during the day, we're getting somewhere on the order of about a 15, maybe a 20% reduction in solar energy. Now, is that important? Well, it is for things like there's a couple direct physical impacts. One is the water usage, the water demand, evaporation is a little bit less. We take the solar radiation down, the net radiation value goes down, and our potential evapotranspiration, that is the amount of demand in the atmosphere, is less than it would be otherwise. So that's one. It's not huge, but it's still measurable. The other factor here is ultimately, of course, if you take out solar radiation, well, one is our maximum temperatures during the day, because there's less solar there, they tend to be a little bit cooler, but it's not much, maybe a couple degrees at best. We've seen that in the past. But then the most important question is it going to impact my crop yields this year? And there's two pieces of that one. And one of them is it is possible in some of these circumstances with some of the smoke where there's actually a toxic effect of the air pollution itself. That's something different. It's typically localized, and it's only when we get that material, whatever it's being released, whatever the smoke is, down to the surface in high concentrations. And of course, we've seen health advisories, so it's not good for people. It's also not ultimately many times not good for plants. But the issue is how much, how long. So that varies greatly. The other issue, though, is a larger one here, back to the solar radiation. Are we reducing solar radiation enough to make some kind of a discernible difference in our crop yields? All the research we have, including some of my own, suggests it's not. That the plants only use a few percent of what comes in, which is amazing. It means that there's a great deal of potential in the future to produce more food with the same amount of energy. But for this, it's hard to see some type of a change, or typically a reduction in the crop potential with percentages that, and not only that of that magnitude, but how long. You can do this, but it takes an extended period of time where we're down on solar radiation, and that does not happen very often. Very, very, very unusual to see that. So the bottom line is here, yes, we're seeing hazy skies and smoke, but probably not seeing much of a direct impact on our crop performance. So I'll stop and move on. I need to talk about weather forecasts as well here. But for the last week, we had, for change of pace, on the left-hand side here, we had a cooler than normal week. Especially at nighttime, we had some fairly nice temperatures down in the 40s and 50s on many mornings. And so most of the state, you can see here on the left, was about 1 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. And that's a change from what we've seen during a lot of, especially the middle of the growing season. More importantly, here on the right, what about water? Because we do have areas of the state where the dryness has been a continuing and a growing problem. We did get some rain in some of those very, very dry areas, west central and southwestern lower, but as has been the case for much of the year, it was it was spotty. And some areas got great rains, 1.5 inches, some cases 2 inches of rain here. This was early last week when we had that rain, but there were other areas not too far away where we really needed the water, and the rainfall totals were much, much less. Some cases only 1/4 or 1/2 inch. So you can see on the map here, our totals range from basically none, 0, in the far northern part of the state, and that's a change because that area has been pretty wet, and into northern lower as well. And then the majority of that precipitation, again, early last week, fell across the southern lower, especially in the southeast. That was the winner for the week here, with over 2, in some cases, flooding was reported in southeastern lower Michigan. But again, the issue is here that there was some very, very much needed rainfall and helpful rainfall, but it wasn't over a large enough area, and that's been a challenge all year. One last thing on that, if we look here at how much are we behind, and this is where the concern really is. If we look at departures from normal back to the early part of May, and the yellows and browns here are all deficits, the green and blues are surpluses, and you can see very well that pattern that has evolved over the growing season: wet in the north and the southeast, and then dry in central and southwestern lower Michigan. But the issue is here. So you look, it's a little hard to see the detail, but we've got some deficits, precip deficits now back to early part of May that are above 6 inches. Now that's a lot. That's almost 2 months worth of precipitation. That's just for 90 days, and of course, it's coming in the middle of the growing season. That's never a good thing, as we all know. And so it's going to take a while, even if we were to have above normal precipitation. That actually is in some of the forecast guidance here, but it's going to take a while to come out or to uh, eliminate or reduce those deficits. Similar situation, longer term dryness over in east central parts of the state, the Saginaw Valley, and portions of the Thumb as well. That's an area that's been dry for all the way back into the early part of the growing season. But as of late, the driest area of the state here has shifted over towards, at least with the problems, over to the west central part of the state. Our degree day totals for the season here range from about 1,100 in the far north, and this is using a May 1 start date. So, and it's using the 8650 cutoff method for the degree days. So it's what you see on the back of your seed corn bag, the total requirements. And some areas now down in the south, we're up around 1,800 or a little bit even above that. And you can see a fairly distinct on the left-hand side here, north to south pattern. That's typical for the year. On the right-hand side are the departures from normal. And you can see that there are some spots, central upper and portions of northern lower, where we're actually at or maybe a little bit behind some deficits. But most of the state, we see the yellows and the reds indicating a surplus. That's especially true across the southwestern, almost half of lower Michigan. And there's more of a surplus as we go south. We've talked about this before. Given that we have a forecast for warmer than normal temperatures here over the next several weeks, and even for the remainder of the growing season, it's very, very likely as a result of this that we are going to end the season with a surplus or in the surplus column, which suggests that our crops phenologically probably will be wrapping up a little earlier than is typically the case in a given year. And that right now, the odds of that look, I think, fairly, at least with the long-term forecast, they look fairly high. In our forecast, speaking about that today, we've got a very, very summer-like pattern here, but with no major weather systems really to speak of. The high pressure that's been parked over the state for the last week is now out over eastern Canada. We're still getting a little bit of an influence with that, but the change that we'll see here today and tomorrow, our winds are going to shift. They've been out of the northeast, which has been really interesting with some drier air. We're going to see those shift around to the southeast and the south here gradually, but it's going to bring up warmer temperatures, also more humidity. So we're going to see an increase in both of those over the next couple of days, and probably we'll have to call it a hot and humid type of weekend here, especially for Saturday and Sunday. With the additional moisture in the atmosphere and the daytime heating, we will see, in this cap and yesterday, we will see the development, and I'm going to call them isolated showers and a few thunder showers that develop over areas, and we'll see that again today. We will see it tomorrow as well. Probably better chances in the northern part of the state, in the south, but again, the word isolated is important. These are going to be hit and miss. Most areas will remain dry. But there will be, again, we will see convection in places. And in some spots, actually, I was not too far away from one yesterday afternoon, had a cell, a thunder shower that basically sat over the same area, and they got over an inch. I only had a few hundredths at my house in Hazlet. I could see it. I could see the lightning, and it just sat there. So there is the possibility you could get some significant rainfall. But the lesson here is, especially over the next couple of days, most people are going to see little or no rain and just increasingly warm conditions. Here's actually the current map. Our temperatures currently now mostly in the 60s, a few upper 50s in the north. And on the right-hand side here, these are totals that weren't in that earlier precip total just that occurred yesterday afternoon. The one little yellow dot here, that's the one that I mentioned just north of my place in Hazlet, but you can see a few spots did pick up actually half an inch yesterday, but most did not. And we've seen that many, many times this growing season. We're likely to continue to see that here over the next couple days. So with the exception of those isolated, mostly afternoon, early evening showers and thunder showers, warm, dry, very big cloudy. There will be a range in cloudiness, but it will be a few degrees warmer today and distinctly more humid as we go on. That's by tonight. By tomorrow morning here, not much change in the map. You can see some green over Michigan. Though that's the isolated showers and thunder showers, and it looks more than it will be because again most areas will remain dry. And here is Saturday. You can see actually a frontal system off cool front off out to our west, and the bottom line on that one is it will give us our next chance for rainfall or more widespread, and that's I put quotes around that. At least there'll be more coverage for rainfall the early part of next week is when it doesn't get here. So we're looking at right now for most of the state a very, very hot and humid type of weekend with high temperatures reaching the low 90s in many spots on both Saturday and Sunday, and our min temperatures going up to 70. So some of that really hot, humid, sticky conditions we had a couple weeks ago, those are going to return at least for the couple days. The next chance again for more widespread precip coming on Monday into Tuesday as it looks right now. We'll also see our temperatures a little bit less than they have been. They will be over the weekend with the 90s. That'll be the peak of the warmth. And then, but mostly 80s again for highs, lows in the 60s here for a good chunk of next week. For total precipitation, for the week. This looks, it's pretty aggressive. There's a lot of blue colors on here. I think we're going to probably, unfortunately, especially for the areas that are dry, we're probably looking at another drier than normal week. And you can see there with the greens are less than half an inch, and that's again that's below normal for this time of the year. You see some blues in there. That's maybe a little bit more than at least what the guidance would suggest in my mind. Best totals, and the best chances for precip in the next week will be across northern parts of the state and then decreasing as you go south. So again, the issues with dryness will continue. Water management is going to be a continuing challenge and issue. And on that level, we do expect with the warmer than normal temperature also above normal potential evapotranspiration rates. So the atmospheric demand for water is going to be high. That's again, if it's dry, that's not what we need. But the average for the whole week between 1600ths and 2/10. It'll be higher than that on Saturday and Sunday because of those really warm temperatures. So those will be the peak days when we probably are up between 2/10 and a quarter of an inch. And this is a reference total that we're talking about here, not for a specific crop, but those are high levels for this, even for midsummer. So greater than normal water demand is expected here for the upcoming week. Now, in the medium range, where are we headed? There's some consistency here. Consistency is good in this game. Looking at outlooks, both the 6 to 10 and the 8 to 14 day outlooks call for our jet stream to be just above the U.S. Canadian border. The core of that a little bit further north than is typically the case, and as a result of that, we see above normal or warmer than normal mean temperatures are forecast here for the vast majority of the lower 48, including Michigan. And I think that's a good bet. So warmer than normal, still the direction we're at. This is a pattern that's fairly similar to what we saw during a lot of late June and July. There will be more frequent chances for precipitation than is typically the case. And so our precipitation totals, at least in the outlook, are at least normal, maybe even a little bit above normal, a little warmer and wetter. And we've had that forecast direction a lot. Now, also note, we've heard that forecast, again, that combination before. Some areas have picked up above normal precip in the northern part of the state, whereas others, again, because of the spotty nature of the precip, have remained below. So expect more of the same thing. That's a similar pattern. But warmer and wetter is the trajectory here as we move into the middle and into the latter part of August. So wrapping up here, again, very, very summer-like forecast. Summer conditions expected here. Warmer and actually becoming uncomfortable, but some isolated rain around, depending on where you are, but most locations remaining dry. And then again, the hot, humid conditions this weekend, followed by the next weather system early next week on Monday and Tuesday.